Henry Lawson was driving back home after a leisurely Sunday afternoon round of golf with his friends. He was a dependable man, hard-working, loyal, a good husband, and a proud father. For over 24 years, Henry had been married to Emma. Together they had raised two wonderful children, Rachel and Ethan. Both were now in their early 20s and away at a nearby university, living on campus together. Henry was a respected and steady employee at the engineering company, where he had worked for 23 years. Life, from the outside, appeared predictable, but fulfilling. Henry was proud of what he had built: his marriage, his family, his career, and the friendships he'd accumulated over the years. But something had shifted, especially over the last year. And it was Emma who had changed. The warm, passionate woman he had fallen in love with had turned into a distant, cold figure in the household. Once full of laughter and life, Emma had become a distracted shell of herself. Their physical relationship had all but disappeared, and any spark had faded into something lifeless and mechanical. Henry was losing her, and he didn't know why. As the children left for college, Henry had tried to rekindle the flame in every way he knew how. Spontaneous date nights, surprise gifts, weekends away, heart-to-heart conversations, but none of it seemed to land. Emma had smiled politely, but her enthusiasm seemed forced. The emotional connection between them had been replaced by a hollow routine. When Henry arrived home that evening, he entered through the garage, as always. He heard the unmistakable clink of wine glasses coming from the dining room. His heart sank a little at the sight that greeted him. Emma was sitting at the dining table with a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a single sheet of paper resting in front of her. "Hey," Henry greeted softly, smiling at his wife, though his chest tightened with anxiety. Emma returned the smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She gestured to the wine bottle and said, "Can we have a quick chat, Henry?" "Of course," Henry replied, the worry building. "Let me change out of these clothes and I'll be right back." Henry moved upstairs to their bedroom, removed his golf clothes, and threw on a comfortable pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. On an impulse, he took out his phone, opened the voice recording app, and pressed record before sliding the phone discreetly into his pocket. He knew something significant was about to happen. His gut had told him so for weeks now. He returned to find Emma with a glass of wine poured for him, her own already half empty. Her face bore a mixture of anxiety and determination that chilled Henry to the core. Emma took a deep breath, clearly having rehearsed what she was about to say. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Henry, please let me say what I need to say before you ask any questions. I've thought this through over the last few months, and it's something that's important to me, important for my happiness. I owe you an apology. I know I haven't been the person I should have been, the wife, the mother, the partner. I've let myself drift, and I've been lost. But I think I've finally found what I need to feel whole again." Henry's stomach turned uneasily, but he nodded, letting her continue. "I'm going to start making some changes in my life," Emma said, her eyes meeting his briefly before looking away again. "I'm going to join a fitness club, take up yoga, and really focus on my health. I've been neglecting myself, and I need to reclaim my well-being." She paused, glancing at the paper in front of her, almost as if it was a script. Henry stayed quiet, holding his breath. "I also want to put more effort into reconnecting with friends and, most importantly, reconnecting with our children. I know how much they mean to you, and I realize that I have let my relationship with them weaken. I need to be a better mother." Henry tried to absorb her words, unsure where this was all leading. He nodded again, urging her to continue. Emma's voice became strained as she reached the more difficult part of her speech. "But it's about more than just the gym or yoga or the kids. It's about us, about me and you. Our marriage has grown stagnant, and I think you know it as well as I do. You've tried to revive it, and I am grateful, but I know I haven't met you halfway. I want to be a better wife, and I want to fall in love with you again. I need to understand what I want from a life partner." Emma hesitated, her hands trembling as she lifted the glass of wine to her lips and took a shaky sip. She placed the glass down and looked Henry in the eye. "But for me to truly understand what I need to explore beyond the boundaries we've always had. I need to experience emotions, feelings, and desires that I haven't allowed myself to feel in a very long time." Henry felt the blood drain from his face, his breath catching in his throat as Emma continued. "To do this, I've decided that I'm going to start seeing other men. It's not because I don't love you. I do, Henry. I love you so much. But I need to explore and understand who I am as a woman. I need to feel things deeply again to truly know what I want from us." Henry stared at her, stunned and unable to find his voice. Emma's words blurred together, every one of them striking his heart like a hammer. Emma pressed on, her voice growing more urgent. "I know this isn't easy to hear. I know you're probably angry, but I'm asking you to keep an open mind. Let me do this so that I can become the best version of myself, so that our marriage can be stronger than ever." Emma paused, as if hoping for a reaction from Henry, but all he could do was blink back at her in shock. She continued, "I've arranged to go out on Friday night, just for a date. I'll be back by midday on Saturday, and I want us to sit and talk about it openly. Please, Henry, understand that I'm doing this for us." Henry remained quiet, his throat tight, emotions churning violently inside. Finally, he managed to stand, his movements feeling disconnected from his body. He spoke quietly, emotionless. "I think I need some time to process this, Emma. I'll head out for a while. Maybe we can talk tomorrow." Emma's eyes brimmed with tears. "Henry, please, I love you. Only you." Without another word, Henry turned and walked out of the room. He headed straight for his car in the garage, each footstep feeling heavier than the last. Once inside, he shut the door, and his fury erupted. He pounded his fists on the steering wheel, his growl of rage echoing in the confined space. "Seeing other men to make our marriage better? What kind of twisted bullshit is this?" he snarled aloud to himself. He drove aimlessly for a while, eventually finding himself at a 24-hour diner. He ordered a burger and a coffee, trying to steady his breathing and gather his thoughts. Henry listened to the recording of Emma's declaration twice, trying to dissect the meaning behind every phrase, every word. But it only made him feel angrier, more betrayed. His children. They were the ones he needed to speak to. They were the only ones who might help him make sense of the madness. He picked up his phone and dialed his daughter, Rachel. "Hey, Dad," Rachel's cheerful voice answered. "Hey, sweetheart, listen, I need to talk to both you and Ethan. Can you put him on the line for a conference call?" Henry asked, struggling to maintain calmness. Rachel snorted with laughter. "Dad, they're called conference calls, not threesomes. You really need to get with the times." Henry gave a tired chuckle. Yeah, just put him on." "Hold on. Yo, Ethan, Dad's on. Get over here," she called to her brother. Henry could hear her muttering about her brother being a lazy bum, stretched out on her couch eating her snacks. Finally, Ethan's voice joined in. "What's up, Dad?" he asked lazily. Henry paused, then spoke firmly. "Kids, I need to talk to you both. It's important. Really important. Not a joke, not a drill. It's serious." Rachel's tone immediately shifted. "Dad, you're scaring me. What happened?" No, I'm okay. Well, not really. Can I come over? I need to see you both." "Sure, Dad. Come over. We'll be here," Rachel replied. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'll see you soon," Henry said, feeling a slight sense of relief. He arrived at their apartment not much later, the drive giving him some time to put his thoughts in order. Rachel and Ethan opened the door together, both of them looking worried. "Dad, what happened?" Rachel asked, pulling him into a hug. Henry looked at both of his children and sighed deeply. "Guys, I need to show you something. It's about your mom. He pulled his phone from his pocket, feeling a twinge of guilt, but knowing that he needed their input. They sat on the couch, Henry playing the recording of Emma's words. He watched his children's faces go from concern to shock, then to anger. Rachel was the first to explode. Are you serious right now? Mom wants to date other men to make things better? What the actual hell? She was pacing the room, her hands flailing as her fury grew. She's been treating you like crap for months, and now she wants to do this? No way. No way. Ethan stayed quieter, his expression dark, but his eyes held a sharpness that reminded Henry of his own determination. Right now, kids, I'm just trying to figure out what I should do, Henry said, his voice breaking a little. You're the first people I thought to call. I need your help. Ethan finally spoke. Dad, are you okay? He asked softly. No, son. No, I'm not okay. I feel like I'm losing everything I thought was real. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. But we need to figure out our next steps. Together. Rachel stopped pacing, her eyes blazing. Okay, Dad, we're in this. Whatever you need. After that evening with Rachel and Ethan, Henry knew exactly what he needed to do. The fury he felt turned into a cold, determined resolve. Emma had made her decision, and now it was time for Henry to make his own. His children had his back, and he was determined to protect them from their mother's selfish choices. The next few days were like navigating a minefield. Henry went through the motions, pretending to be calm and collected, though every word from Emma grated against him. He had already called his lawyer and set up a meeting to discuss his options. Emma might think that she held all the cards, but Henry was about to change the game completely. On Wednesday morning, while Emma was in the shower, Henry took his chance. He picked up her phone from the nightstand, typed in the passcode, and he was in. He immediately went to her text messages, scrolling until he found what he was looking for. A series of flirtatious messages between Emma and someone saved as Lily. It didn't take him long to realize that Lily wasn't a woman at all, but a man named Vincent, who worked in Emma's office. Henry photographed the entire exchange, pages and pages of flirtation, suggestive comments, and detailed plans for their upcoming date. The messages confirmed that Emma and Vincent had already been intimate at a motel twice, and there were references to photos and videos that Emma had saved on her private email. Henry took his time to capture all the incriminating evidence before putting the phone back on the nightstand. He then left the house quietly before Emma could come out of the shower. Later that afternoon, Henry met with his lawyer, Margaret, and handed her everything he had gathered. She looked over the evidence, nodding as Henry spoke. It's clear she's been unfaithful, Henry said, his voice laced with bitterness. She's already planning her next rendezvous with this guy Vincent. She thinks I'm just going to sit by and watch. Margaret adjusted her glasses and leaned back in her chair. Well, Henry, we have enough here to pursue a divorce on the grounds of adultery, which would favor you significantly in the settlement. We can go for a larger share of the assets, especially since your children are willing to testify. This could get very ugly for her. Henry's eyes were cold. Good. Let it be ugly. I want her to feel the weight of her betrayal. I want her to understand what she's done to our family. Margaret nodded. We'll get the paperwork ready. I suggest we serve her at a moment when it's most impactful. Henry paused, considering. She's going on a date with Vincent this Friday. She thinks I'm oblivious. I want her served then, publicly, when she's at her most confident. Margaret smiled, a hint of admiration for Henry's resolve showing. We can do that. On Friday, Henry set everything into motion. He took the day off from work, coordinating with Rachel and Ethan, who were both eager to play their parts. They packed up Emma's belongings, moving everything out of the house and into a storage unit near her parents' home. They made quick work of it, making sure that when Emma came home, the house would be as empty of her presence as possible. Rachel was especially driven, her anger at her mother fueling her every movement. "Dad, she deserves this. She deserves worse, honestly," she muttered as she loaded another box. Henry only nodded, his heart aching but resolute. He was doing what needed to be done. By the time evening arrived, Henry received a text from Margaret confirming that the process server was ready. Rachel insisted on going to the restaurant where Emma was having her date with Vincent. She wanted to be there, to watch her mother realize that her lies and betrayal had caught up with her. Henry stayed home, a strange calm settling over him. He knew what was about to happen, and he knew that there was no turning back. He had to make his stand, not just for himself, but for Rachel and Ethan as well. Emma was giddy as she sat across from Vincent at the dimly lit restaurant, the atmosphere tinged with romance. She wore a tight, elegant red dress, her hair styled to perfection, and her eyes shining with excitement. For the first time in years, she felt alive, desirable. The thrill of sneaking around, the prospect of a new life, filled her with exhilaration. But that feeling was shattered in an instant when Rachel suddenly appeared at their table. "Mom," Rachel said coldly, her eyes hard as steel. Emma's smile faltered. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" she stammered. Rachel glared at her mother, ignoring Vincent completely. "How could you do this to Dad? To us?" Emma's face flushed, her heart pounding in her chest. "Rachel, please, this is not the time or place." But Rachel didn't back down. Her voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby diners. "You're here on a date with this man, betraying Dad, and you think it's okay? After everything Dad has done for you?" Emma's face paled, and Vincent shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emma opened her mouth to speak, but before she could respond, a man in a suit approached their table. "Mrs. Emma Lawson?" he asked, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Emma looked up, dread sinking in her stomach. "Yes, that's me." The process server handed her a thick envelope, his voice ringing out. "Mrs. Lawson, you've been served." A hush fell over the restaurant and Emma's face turned ashen. She clutched the envelope in her hands, her eyes wide with shock. Rachel looked at her mother with disgust. "You brought this on yourself," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, before turning and walking out of the restaurant without another word. Emma could feel the eyes of every diner on her, whispers already spreading like wildfire. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and vanish. Vincent looked mortified, muttering something about needing to leave as he quickly stood up and exited, leaving Emma alone, humiliated and reeling. When Emma arrived home that night, her nightmare continued. She found the locks had been changed, and her key no longer worked. She banged on the door, tears streaming down her face, but there was no response. In desperation, she called Henry's phone. Henry picked up after a few rings, his voice calm, almost detached. "Emma!" "Henry, please, what is going on? My key doesn't work. Let me in," Emma pleaded, her voice breaking. "I told you, Emma," Henry said, his voice cold. "I told you that if you went through with this, there would be consequences. You didn't listen. There's a letter for you in the envelope you were served. Read it. Everything you need to know is there." He hung up, leaving Emma standing in the dark, her heart pounding with fear and regret. She tore open the envelope, her hands shaking, and pulled out the letter. "Emma, I told you that I would not be part of a marriage where you dated other men. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. You are being served with divorce papers citing adultery. I have provided evidence to support my claims, and I am seeking an uneven division of our assets in my favor. All of your belongings have been moved to a storage unit. The key and the address are included in this letter. I have informed our children of your actions, and they have chosen to stand by me. Do not contact me except through my lawyer. You made your decision, and now you must live with it. Henry." Emma sank to the ground, her tears blurring the words in front of her. She had never imagined that it would come to this, that Henry, the loving, kind man she had married, would ever take such a stand. She had underestimated him, and now she was paying the price. She called Rachel, hoping to find some comfort, but the call went straight to voicemail. She tried Ethan, but there was no answer. Her family had turned their backs on her, and she had no one to blame but herself. In the weeks that followed, Henry proceeded with the divorce, and Emma signed the papers, knowing she had no leverage left. She moved into a small, cramped apartment, her life unraveling piece by piece. Vincent had cut off contact, wanting nothing to do with the fallout of her failed marriage. The videos of her public humiliation had gone viral, and her reputation at work had taken a severe hit. Her colleagues whispered behind her back, and she knew it was only a matter of time before her job was gone too. Meanwhile, Henry found solace in the support of his children. They rebuilt their lives together, and though the pain of Emma's betrayal lingered, they faced it as a family. They had each other, and that was enough. Emma had wanted to find herself, to live a new life. But instead, she found herself alone, shunned, and filled with regret. The price of her selfishness was far greater than she could have ever imagined, and as she sat in her empty apartment, she realized that she had lost everything that truly mattered: her husband, her children, her home. And she had no one to blame but herself.